All right.
Go ahead, Richard.
Have to get rid of my got it button there. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Bobbi Lane to everybody. And I want to thank Peter for initially getting Bobbi. We tried to get her last year, and through circumstances, we've got her tonight. Thank you, Bobbi. Bobbi is she's a commercial photographer, and she specializes in creative portraits. That's fantastic. And she does this on locations and in studios, but she does a great job on locations. And that's what the topic is going to be about tonight, basically. And she's bringing tonight only 35 years of experience of her photography for us. That's going to be a power pack program, I'm sure. She spent 25 years in Los Angeles and eventually returned to Massachusetts 9-10 years ago with her husband, and they have a thriving business there. She's also travels the world leading travel workshops all over the place. And I believe we'll probably see some photographs from those travels, Bobbi.
Yes, quite a few.
Okay, great. And she's also an author. She's written 2 books, Creative Techniques for Color Photography, and an advertising book called Advertising Photography, a straightforward guide to a complex industry. Sounds like complicated.
Long name.
Yeah, and then she's also got DVDs on photography. They may be on your website to buy, maybe, or something.
They're kind of gone, you know.
Oh no, okay.
But we'll talk about that.
Okay, great. And one of the things, a prominent organization in photography, I'm not quite sure which one it is, named Bobbi, one of the top workshop instructors in the industry. So she's got great credentials, and I would like to introduce Bobbi Lane to y'all.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard, and hello to everybody. I really I'm really delighted to be here. I love it when I have an active club. You know, it's like it means so much to have people involved that are really interested. It's a good feedback. It's a good energy. You know, I was talking to Richard and Chuck before about, you know, it's so wonderful to be able to do stuff in person because you're actually having the interaction and you get to see everybody. But at the same time, Zoom is now giving us an opportunity to reach people that we couldn't reach otherwise, and that for you to see people that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. So I'm kind of like I'm a big Zoom fan, although I would still rather see you all in person. So anyway, I'm going to get into this right away, but I do want to say this. I think it's my website that says 35 years of experience. It's actually more like 45.
Oh my.
You know, I always say I started when I was 5. You know, so you know, I've just been hanging in there for a little while. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get the show going here. So let me do that and then pull up the PowerPoint and let me go to the slideshow. Okay, so you can all see this, okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm a commercial photographer. What that means is that I shoot for businesses and magazines and advertising agencies and design firms and direct businesses. So it's in, you know, editorial. So it's I'm not I don't do portraits and weddings that you hang on your wall outside of for my friends. You know, it's mostly I'm working it's basically helping to tell stories about companies, their people, their businesses, their products, their services, etc. So basically, that's what I've always done. I started off as a large format product photographer, only in the studio. I never wanted to shoot people. All I wanted to do was spend 8 hours a day working on arranging everything and lighting everything perfectly and making all of this really, like, you know, fine-tuned, crazy, nitpicky, control freak kind of stuff. And actually, that served me tremendously well as I was making the transition into shooting more people, because I learned how to pay attention to the detail. And I always say that a portrait can be made or broken in the details. I'm a very dedicated photo educator. I tell people that photography is my profession, but that teaching is truly my passion. I mean, I love to be able to impart this information and to help you become better photographers in your way. You know, I'm not trying to turn anybody into me. You can't be me. I can't be you. I want to give you tips and techniques and ideas and concepts that will help you take yourself further. And Richard mentioned, I do lead travel workshops. I've been doing travel workshops for quite a few years. My husband is Lee Varys. If you don't know who he is, you should probably look him up. He's one of the digital pioneers. He started shooting digital in the 90s. He has every Adobe designation that you possibly can imagine. He's a master post-processing on anything, not just Adobe, on everything. And I always kind of like to use this. I'm a lover of light and life and people. I love going out and meeting people and talking to people and finding out something about them, and then trying to communicate that to other people. And a lot of my travels, you will see that I kind of feel it's like one of my purposes in life is to go out and photograph people that other people can't see. Like most people in the United States are not going to go to the United Arab Emirates, for example, or to Myanmar or to Ethiopia. Yet if you see those people and I make photographs and I can bring them back and show it to you, you will have a better understanding of human beings in the world and how we are more similar than we are dissimilar. So we'll go on from there. So I'm going to get right into this. So when I talk about environmental portraits, basically what this means is that it's not in the studio. I am using their place of work or where they live or something that's in the background to give you more information, more story about who the person is. Now, when I talk about this, I think it's very important to understand that you can't just have any background behind somebody. It has to actually have a good composition. I always think that it's a really good idea to have the picture. If the person walked out of the photograph and you just saw the background, it would still be interesting. Now, that doesn't always work because sometimes we just kind of want everything to really be out of focus. However, most of the time, that is a really important thing to say. It's not just, oh, here's a background and let's just put somebody in front of it. So, for example, I love to start off with this. This is in Dubai. That is the Burj Khalifa. That's the tallest building in the world, at least for now. There are 2 or 3 other countries that are building taller buildings, and then Dubai has now plans to do even more. I've been to Dubai 14 times. There's a workshop company there called Gulf Photo Plus, and I started teaching there in 2007. And for a while, they were doing twice a year. So I was there quite a bit, and I've been to Oman 4 times, and I've actually been to Saudi Arabia, which nobody can go to, but I was there for 75th anniversary of Aramco with a film company. Anyway, so in this picture, I had gone and scouted earlier the day. This is a young man who was a rising executive. He's an American, but he's an executive at a company in Dubai that is very climate conscious. They are they're an environmental company. That's the best way that I can put it. So in this picture, I wanted to get the feeling of who he was and where we are. And right behind me at that time was a construction site, which is now all completely built up. But the curve of this bridge, I thought, was just an absolutely beautiful element of the composition to be able to put him inside of that and then have the Burj Khalifa just rising into the skies on the other side of him. And I did shoot him with a flash, and I did some other pictures. I think you're going to see another picture of him. But this late afternoon glow, there's no sunlight left at this point, but you can see that glow that's in the sky and just that kiss of light that's on his face where his body's pretty silhouetted, and that glow on the curve of the bridge with the beginning of the blue in the background. So a couple of things just to start you off. When you're doing an environmental portrait, you want to use the space appropriately, but you also always need to make sure that you have clear headspace. You don't want to have buildings, trees, anything growing out of somebody's head. You want to have the headspace clear because you are making a photograph of a person. So you don't want to look them like they have antlers. Okay, so that's really important. And of course, your time of day, your light is always going to have a huge impact. And I don't know whether you said this or not, but I do have a nickname that's Mistress of Light because I teach so much about natural lighting, portable flash, and studio light. Light is everything. You can have great composition and great subject matter, but if you don't have light that's appropriate, then the impact of the photograph is going to be lost. And also, before I go on, I'm just trying to get all this stuff into your brain so you'll be thinking about this while we talk about it. I always talk about light has three major aspects: direction, quality, and depth. The direction of light is where is the light coming on the subject, and therefore where are you placing the highlights and the shadows? That does two things. It's describing the form, because on 2 dimensions, light areas come towards you and dark areas go away. So we create the illusion of depth and show form by light versus shadow. And also it goes towards the mood. If you have a lot of dark area in your picture, it's going to be more dramatic than if you have a lot of light area. So that's direction. Quality of light. Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it bounced? Is it diffused? There's millions of quality of light, but that should match your subject. You're not going to take a mother with a brand new baby and put them out in direct sunlight. It's hard, contrasty, dark shadows, hard edge. You don't do that. So it's got to match your mood. The other thing that the light is going to do, the quality of light, it's going to describe the surface characteristic. If you have a hard light, you're going to get more detail. You're going to get more color saturation. You're going to have more sharpness, harder shadows, but really more detail all the way around. So if you want to photograph somebody that has texture in their skin, you want to photograph them in soft light, not in hard light, provided that you're trying to make a flattering photo, not what I call an effective or a dramatic photo. And the last one is called the depth of light, which basically I'm talking about how dark your shadows are. And that does one thing only. It's the mood. The darker the shadow, the more dramatic the picture is going to be. So you can see here with him being in silhouette and then having that whole dark edge that goes along there, that adds a lot of drama to this photograph. If it was shot at a different time of day, even if he was under the shadow of the bridge, but there was a lot more light around, you wouldn't have the drama that you do now. So direction, quality, and depth. Every photograph has those three aspects of light. You can't have a photograph that doesn't have that. And each one is controlled separately, and you have to be aware of that so that you can use those elements to enhance your concept. You got to have a story that you're telling about somebody. So this is Bill Sumner. This is the photographer that I learned from. When I left photography school, I'm from Boston. When I left photography school, New England School of Photography, I went to work for Bill as a part-time assistant when I was still in school, and then I went full-time for him. Bill is still a very, very dear friend of mine. I learned about light from him in photography school. I learned how to measure it, expose for it, print for it, but I didn't really understand about the direction, the quality, the depth, and how it really makes your picture. And I learned that from Bill. He still is a very, very dear and close friend of mine. I talk to him all the time. In fact, he's coming to Italy with us for Carnival in a couple of weeks. So this was actually something I was using Photix lights, and I did this for Photix. It was a little video, and then we also did some stills. Bill has shot everything from 8x10 to half frame film cameras. He's shot video. He's used hot lights. He's used strobes. He's used portable strobes. He's used natural light. He's used everything. And you probably have seen a lot of his work. He left Boston and went to Dallas. And while he was there, Nike became one of his clients. And in the late 80s, 90s, and beyond, he shot all the sports hero posters. So he's holding a couple of pictures there right now, and he's actually lighting the poster with a portable flash, but I have him lit with big lights with the other lights in the background. So this is kind of an homage, and there's a little bit out the window light. You've got a little bit of natural light in there as well. So I was trying to pull all of the elements in there together. So again, storytelling. I was hired by Marketing Magazine. They were doing the top 10 marketers of the year. And this is when kayak was just getting going. I lived in Connecticut for 10 years in Westport, just about 50 miles outside of New York. And kayak was the next town over where they started. So, lots of times if I'm going to do an environmental portrait, I will go to the person's place of business and I will scout the location. I got to look around. I got to see what they've got there. I got to start to think about ideas. I make little drawings. I make like little layouts. And believe me, I cannot draw. It's stick figures. If anybody else looked at this, they would think that I was an idiot, but it means something to me. And that's all that really matters. So I did 4 or 5 different concepts that I had actually used more elements in the office. But this one, since kayak when they came on the scene, they just became the powerhouse. They took over every other travel search engine there was. That map that's behind him, I actually brought with me. So I brought the map, put that in the background. We put the ink on his fingers and kept him just slightly out of focus so that the kayak was important. When I was in California, one of my clients was Car Audio Magazine, and they would send me around the country. Car Audio was an enthusiast magazine. It doesn't exist anymore, where people who had put incredible car stereos, and they could, I mean, I photographed this one guy. He put a $10,000 stereo into like a $4,000 car, like it was 10 years old, and it was fantastic. It made you cry. So most of the time, what I was doing for them was I was photographing the stereo equipment installed in the car. So I'd have to fly to places, bring all my lights, and basically do product photography cramped inside of a car and make it look good. But one of the other things that we did was we always had to do an environmental portrait. And I really loved doing this. So this is actually in, it's in California, just south of Santa Barbara. I'm drawing a blank on the name, Oxnard. And there's a lot of oil stuff that goes on there. And he worked for the oil company. You see the palm tree in the background. So late afternoon light, and I'm breaking the rules. You normally don't shoot people with a wide angle lens, but I'm down low. I'm looking up at him. I'm making him look like he's kind of larger than life. Clear headspace around the round column that you see there. You see his car in the background, and he's got the sunglasses on. You know, I mean, this guy was a very cool guy. So this is a great story. This is a young man in Memphis. And of course, Memphis is where Elvis Presley was from. And so I show up the day before, and I've never been to Graceland. So I went on a little tour of Graceland. It's like amazing. I mean, I really, it's tacky, but it's fantastic. It's really was like so cool. So the next day, the day that I was going to be photographing him in his car, the next day was Elvis's birthday, and it would have been his 59th birthday. And American Airlines did a promotion that if you showed up at any airport in the United States dressed as Elvis, you could buy a round trip ticket to Memphis for $59. So Graceland was overrun with Elvis impersonators. So I told the kid about this and said, I want to do this. And he's like, yeah, you know, I hate Elvis. I really hate Elvis. So we went down to the levee. There's the Mississippi Belle in the background there with his car on the old cobblestones. And this is a shot that the magazine used. The other shot where I paid this Elvis impersonator like $5 to come over so I could get a picture. And the kid's wearing like a Megadeth or, you know, some kind of heavy metal band t-shirt. And I got him flashing the peace symbol here. But, you know, he called the magazine and said, I really hate Elvis. Don't use that picture, which was unfortunate, but you know, but again, and sometimes when there's a lot of space around for stuff like this for magazines, I have to make sure that there's room to put in titles and any copy that goes on. So on both of these pictures, like you'd be able to put type over the top and at the bottom. This is something I have a fairly new client the last couple of years at Southern California Gas, who doesn't know that I don't live in Los Angeles anymore, and it's quite okay. I'm perfectly happy to fly back there and continue to shoot for them. And this is the first project that I did for them, and it's called 811, Call Before You Dig. So when people are doing home improvement projects, you know, they could be trenching in their backyard or putting in a mailbox or something like that, and they start digging without calling the gas company, they could be breaking gas lines. So it was all about safety information. So again, a lot of this stuff you're going to see is kind of like, I'm using wide angle lenses. I'm doing stuff that's a little weird. Most of this is all natural light, but I am also using, they're not portable flash. I'm using larger flashes, like the B10 studio flashes that are all battery operated with big umbrellas that I'm using as a fill. I'm mostly trying to backlight people with a natural light and then fill in the shadows. In the one on the right, I do have my little portable flash that is lighting up the broken gas line. But and my camera, you know, in case you haven't figured out by now, I'm a Fuji photographer, considering you see that on every slide. I've been a Fuji photographer for 7 years now. I will never touch another camera. I'm totally sold. I have the camera in the ditch, and because it has an articulating back, I can hold it down there and just turn the LCD screen so that I can see it, and it works great. This was another one I did for Photix, the lighting company. So she's got a barn with a couple of horses. And this is tricky because now what I'm trying to do is I've got barn light. I still have some light in the sky and I need to light them. So I'm using a giant octabank. It's about a 6-foot wide octabank to light them, but then dragging the shutter, using a slower shutter speed to pull in the light from the sky and from the background. And it's very tricky because whenever you have natural light, like in the barn, or I should say incandescent light in the barn, you have to be careful about the sky. It's like you've only got about a 10 or 15-minute window, depending upon the latitude that you're living in, where you're going to be able to find a balance there. This is natural light. I wanted to show you some stuff that's natural light. And again, simple pictures. You don't have to show everything to get the idea across. All you need to do is create an impression because you want your viewer to be involved. I don't have to assume that my viewer is so stupid that I need to spoon feed everything to them so that they can understand what's going on. I think you can probably get the idea that this is a student, you know, and this is done. There's big windows behind me. It's all natural light. My favorite lens for the Fuji for portraits is the 56-1.2. That's the equivalent of an 85 on a full frame camera. And actually, we're in a room here where there was a little bit of like a coffee service over on the left, and there was bookcases around. And so, you know, it's a college campus. So just a very simple picture. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Bobbi, can we go back
Yes.
to that picture for just a second? I've got a
Sure.
question. You said you use a 56-1.2. Do you ever use 1.2 for your portraiture, or do you
Yeah,
want a
that's what I
little bit
meant.
more depth of field?
I'm sorry, ask the question again. I think I interrupted you.
Do you use 1.2 often, or do you use a little smaller f-stop, which most people have, where smaller f-stop, where most people have to get just a tad
Yes.
more depth of field? You want to get both eyes in focus, sometimes the ear and stuff.
I'm really glad that you asked that question, Richard, because I have my favorite saying in photography is everything depends upon everything. So I don't have a formula. It will depend upon the situation. I don't think that I shot this at 1.2, but it might have been like 1.8 or maybe f2. And that rule about both eyes in focus, that's also in everything depends, because that's not always necessary. But one of the reasons that I really love this lens is that, you know, there's a lot of 1.2 lenses out there, and a lot of them are kind of soft at 1.2. This lens at 1.2 is like the most ridiculously sharp thing you have ever seen in your life. It's a great lens. And if you look at this, you can see her hands are out of focus. You can even tell the back of her hair is out of focus. But this is probably done at like 1.8, 1 or 2. Because, you know, again, the closer you get, the less depth of field you're going to have.
Okay.
Okay, this was for a company that was, they make a lot of energy efficient stuff. And I was photographing the people in all their different departments. And I always do a lighting design. When I'm going to go in and photograph for a company, I will make a lighting design, and then I will use that for all the pictures in the company so that there's consistency. And that's true about whether I'm doing their portraits, or in this case, I was doing pictures of the managers, and in each one, the manager of each department, I had to show something about their department. So this is where all the computer servers are. You know, they've got giant computer servers in this. And actually, this man was not in charge of this department, but I met him, and look at those ears. I had to photograph him. So I asked him if he would step in so I could get a couple of shots of him, which I like this way better than the guy who was actually the real manager, but this guy was fantastic. So in this case, what I was doing is I would light the people warm, and I would always put a nice soft light on them, give them a little slash light, and then I would light whatever was in the background with a little bit of cool. So you know how I said you have light areas come forward and dark areas go away? It's the same with color. Warm areas come forward and dark, and cool colors go away. So you can create more depth with your advancing and receding colors. This is in a laboratory. And again, you know, choosing to focus on the beaker instead of the person. So again, you don't have to show everything to get the idea across. And this is something I did just recently. This is there's an awful lot of high-tech companies that are in Boston. You know, we've got the whole 128 corridor here, where it's kind of like the mini Silicon Valley. This is a pharmaceutical company, and their themes were their logo has orange. And I always tell people to bring a variety of clothes, but they had the art direction had come from this, that they wanted everything to be very high key and bright and happy. It's a young company. A lot of young people work there. So she showed up with several different changes of clothes, but the orange shirt, which I thought was great, with the orange in the background. And then you can see the other colors in the background. But in this case, I put a lot of light in the behind so that it would be bright, because that's what they wanted to have, that happy feeling. And again, you can see I used very small depth of field here because it's all the emphasis was on her, but you've got enough information to know what's going on in the background. I mean, you know where she is. Same company. So same thing, you know, it's, you've got the light in the background. And lots of times I like to put something in the foreground so that, you know, we all want to have something out of focus in the background, but lots of times you can even get a little bit more depth and add a little bit to the story if you have something in the foreground that's out of focus as well. When I was in LA, this is one of my pro bono accounts. This is the Puente Center. Sister Jenny, who's in the foreground here, started this company. She's a nun working with a group of nuns, and they were working with students, young students in East LA. And they thought that the students would learn better if their parents were involved. And what they discovered was that it's a very Hispanic area. A lot of the parents didn't speak English. So Sister Jenny and her other nun friends who were doing this started this whole thing in the evening about for free, teaching the parents English, how to read and write English, and then teaching them computer schools. And she ended up raising so much money that they ended up building 2 facilities in Los Angeles, where they would have at any time over 2,000 students enrolled, completely free, full-time education, job placement. They had daycare for their kids, after-school programs, completely free, and all private and corporate donations, no government money at all. So this was in the second location, and they really wanted to have the students involved. So their lobby was 2 stories high with all these staircases. So this was the cover of their annual report. It's all natural light. So it was really just a matter of kind of like getting people in the right places and getting the idea about what was going on.
Bobbi, can I ask you another question about that?
Sure.
I'm trying to think questions that members may ask.
Okay.
This picture is tilted. You know, that's not the rules, right?
Right. That's breaking the rules.
If you can relate this to family portraiture, is that a fun thing to do to capture family? Maybe just tilt the camera, you know, a little bit of levity or whatever.
Yes. I think sometimes I think it's very appropriate, because it adds a little bit more dynamics to it, because, you know, once you tilt, you have more diagonal lines. So a person is going to become diagonal, and diagonals are very strong movement lines. So it does give it a lot more energy. So, you know, it depends upon the company. It depends upon the people. You know, some of them are going to want something that's a little more straight, and some are going to be a little bit more open to it. And they certainly were open to doing something that was a little bit different. This was for, you know, University of Phoenix. They do online, you can get a degree doing it online, and they have people all over the country, and they do stories on them and then use them for advertising. So this woman was the marketing director at Hansen Air Force Base in Massachusetts. So she's lit with a portable flash and a softbox, and I just balanced to the sky basically in the background, and you know it's a plane. I have a little bit of light that's bouncing in there, but it's basically I can just have the silhouette of the plane. This is Alan Menken. Alan Menken has more Oscars than any other living human being. He's the composer for the Disney movies. He did, you can see up on the top, he did Aladdin, he did The Little Mermaid, he did Beauty and the Beast. He did Little Shop of Horrors. He's done all kinds of stuff. So this is in his studio, which is, he's got a whole studio building attached to his house. This is in upstate New York. And what he does is he has all these monitors around that he can see the film, and then he composes on the keyboard to compose the music to go along with the movie. So it's a drag the shutter, he's lit, and I'm shaking the camera so that the screens get a little out of focus, because I didn't want that to be too sharp. I want the emphasis to be on him. So again, like lots of times these take hours to set up. It's not a matter of that I just walk in and pop a light down. I've got to get the composition set up. I've got to get the lighting set up. I've got to do all the testing. I'm not going to have the person sit there while it takes me an hour or 2 hours to set something up. I just want them to be able to come in when everything is all ready and then I can work with them, that I don't have to concentrate on anything else except my relationship with the subject and trying to work with them. So, it's again, you gotta make that work. When I was in Connecticut, I did a lot of work for Ridgefield and Bedford magazines. And a lot of those were stories about local people. That one for Alan Menken was for that. And this is a man who had a dojo. I know I'm telling a lot of stories here, but I do have 125 pictures. I'm not going to tell a story about everything, but I'm still kind of getting you going. So this was for the magazine. I came in there. It's like sometimes places look horrible. I mean, it's just a concrete block building, right? And it was really ugly, fluorescent lights in the ceiling. And he's got, because it's a dojo, people are doing martial arts, there's a lot of padding on the floor. Well, I found that the red logo, and they use swords in this, they're not real swords, but they use swords as part of the martial arts. And I thought that was interesting. And I thought, okay, I can put him in there. But that place right in front of him, the pad was all ripped up. And I said, you wouldn't happen to have another pad that could come in here? And he went in the back and he came out and he said, I'm really sorry, the only one I have is red. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like it couldn't have been more perfect to have him on the red with the red in the background. This is dramatic. 2 grid spots, one grid spot from camera right on him, and the other one is the grid spot on the background, which with the grid spots, that's just makes a concentration of light. It's like a theatrical spotlight, right? So the shadows will fall off very quickly. It's a hard light, but it's dramatic. I'm not going to do soft, pretty lighting on martial arts that uses swords. It's again, making it all match. Also for Ridgefield magazine, this is the horologist of London. He was an Englishman who was obviously what he did is he worked on watches and clocks. So I came in and set this up. I pulled this table in front. I put the table clocks in front to go out of focus. And then with the grandfather clocks in the background. And this guy was a real character. I kind of felt like with that little hammer of his, he was like, those, you've seen those pictures of the cuckoo clocks in Europe where there's like little things and they go like this, they come out and they do this. He was kind of like that. It was really kind of funny. So horologist, the HORO is Latin for time, right? So I told a friend of mine that I was going to go photograph the horologist of London. And he paused for a second and he said, is that somebody who studies English prostitutes? Okay, the director of the Ridgefield Playhouse. So again, I have a focusing spotlight on her, a Fresnel light that's on her, dragging the shutter for the light in the background, shaking the camera a little bit. Remember, the strobe light's going to freeze the person because the strobe is only going off in a 5,000th of a second. But if you're shaking the camera, a longer shutter speed, a 1/4 of a second or an 1/8 of a second or something, it's going to make the background a little blurry. And they were setting up for the Dave Mason concert that night. And here's another one of the tilted camera ones. So you can see where she's sharp, but there's a little bit of light in the background. Now, when you do this balancing the light, dragging the shutter, you really need to watch out to make sure that the person's face is not going to be in any direct ambient light, right? Because then they're going to have both ambient light on their face and the strobe light, and that's not going to work. Now you can see like her hair, there is some lights in the ceiling that are coming down and hitting her hair. So you see even that's kind of like a little bit of warmer color, and you see that shaking a little bit, but wherever the strobe is hitting, it's frozen. Our local barber shop, this is where Lee gets his haircut. Well, when he used to get his haircut, he hasn't had his haircut in a couple of years now. We did this, they told us they were redoing their website, and we said, let us come in and do your photos for you. So this was another like pro bono job. This is as simple as it possibly can be. Look, the light on them is gorgeous. It's beautiful, it's soft, their skin tones look fantastic. The easiest thing in the world, I took a 20 by 30 inch piece of foam core board. You can go to any office supply store or an art supply store and get a piece of white foam core. I clamped it to a stand. I took my portable flash on a stand and pointed it at the white card. So I'm taking a flash that has an opening that's this big, right? And I'm bouncing it into a piece that's this big and filling that with light. So now my light source is 20 by 30 inches. It's white and it's bouncing. So it spreads everywhere and it softens out. So now the exposures for them. So I'm exposed for them. The light is still, when you bounce that light, it goes everywhere. So you do have light in the background. There is no natural light in this picture at all. This is all from the light of my portable flash into that piece of white foam cardboard. Again, shooting fairly wide open. I don't need to have the stuff in the background sharp. You can get the idea of where you are. And then it's like I said, you're working with the person, trying to get, good expressions and make them feel comfortable. This is also a recent job that I just did. This is a husband and wife that have a wine store in Boston. This was actually for an ad for First Republic Bank. First Republic is their bank, and they do the drawing a blank on the word. It's like testimonials. So these people are saying the bank really helped them with their business and blah 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 blah. This was a full page ad in Wired magazine, and also used for a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is very simple. There was direct sunlight coming in the background. So I'm lighting them with a big umbrella. I'm using a big umbrella because I wanted soft light on them, and I wanted light to be able to spread onto the bottles off to the camera left side. There's a little bit of light that hits the background there, but most of that is the natural light that's coming in the window. Okay, now so that's the commercial part. So now let's get into artists, actors, and musicians. I have a lot of friends who are artists, actors, and musicians. So I'm doing a lot of the stuff for them, stuff for me. It's just I love doing this. This is Nicholas Herrera. He is in New Mexico. He's a Hispanic folk artist in lots of museums. He's in the National Gallery in Washington D.C. Just a really incredible character. And that car is actually a desk. And it lights up, the cars light up. I mean, the headlights light up, and you can move it around. You see the wheels on it. Natural light coming in the window. Looking for clear headspace. Doc Evermore, he was a salvage operator that became a crazy man welding everything together. He built the largest junk metal sculpture in the world called the Forevertron. And this one here is what he called one of his riding birds. And it's made out of, if you look at that, it was a scissor factory that he took apart. And so those are all scissor blades that are in there. Again, two windows. A window coming from camera left that's illuminating him. And on the other side of his big warehouse is another window. And you see that gives that little bit of edge light there. So it just kind of gives a little bit of highlight along the edge. Debbie Fleming Caffery is a fine art photographer. She's won Guggenheims and all kinds of other grants from Louisiana. If the stuff on the background, I probably should have had a little more focus on this, but she grew up Catholic in Louisiana, and she's enamored with all of the icons and the saints and the angels and all this other stuff. So directly behind her head is actually an 8-foot tall wooden carved angel. And then I can't remember the name of the saint's name that's in the background that looks like that triangle, but people from New Mexico are aware of this name. I'm sorry that I can't think of it. I'm not Catholic. I didn't get all the saint stuff. So, but this is all natural light as well. It's window light coming in, and there's a reflector placed somewhat underneath of her, because what that does is that it makes her skin reflect the white, so the skin tone gets very smooth. Plus, you can see the catch light in her eye, and that is from the reflector. So the over to camera right is where the window is. The window's coming in. There is some soft light on her, but it's also illuminating the reflector, which is kind of like at an angle underneath of her, so that the skin reflects white and cleans up the skin tones. This is Karen Kuhn. Karen Kuhn is actually one of my muses. Karen was a big photographer in New York City, and she got married and had a child and said that she didn't want to raise the child in the city. So she moved to New Mexico. She lives on a 9-acre farm in Peralta, which is south of Albuquerque. She is an incredible photographer. She's one of the greatest photographers I know. If you want to look her up, her last name is Kuhn, Kuehn. She's got tattoos all over her. She loves animals. So, and this is some famous designer's dress. So I put her in the dress and got all the dogs up on the bed with her. And this is, again, portable flash lighting her. I'm bouncing it. And then there's sunlight coming in the window. David Burnett, Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist, a 50-year career. If you don't know David Burnett, you should look at him too. He's done every Olympics in the last 40 years. This was at a gallery show for him. And you can see Bob Marley is looking at Dave from camera left, and Teddy Kennedy is looking at Dave from camera right. Portable flash with a grid spot on it, not on the camera. My husband's holding it off the camera. Dave is like the nicest guy in the world and a brilliant photographer. This is another one actually for Ridgefield Magazine. This is another complicated one where I'm lighting him, but I've got the window light outside and I've got the light that's on the painting. This is Tom Christensen. Tom paints these brightly colored scenes of New York City, but he lives in upstate New York, where you can see out the window is all gray and foggy. So I kind of wanted to pull all the elements together here. So again, kind of a complicated in terms of balancing, but just trying to tell a little bit more story. And he's got a Hollywood t-shirt on because he lived in LA for about 15 years. Adele Balkan, she was 92 years old when I took this picture, and she was about to have her very first gallery show. She was a costume designer for the movie studios. She did a Cleopatra with Claudette Colbert in the 1930s, and then she did Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor in the 1960s. The Academy wanted to do a book on her, and they used my photos in the book. One light. This is a friend of mine who was an actor. A few years ago in Boston, there was a woman had done this art installation, which was fog machines that went off at different times at different locations around the city of Boston. And this is in Franklin Park, where there was an old, falling apart fort, and there was this tunnel. So every 20 minutes, the fog machine would go off and the fog would flood through the tunnel. So we got this whole getup for him and the sword. I have one flash behind him that's just a bare head, and then I have a grid spot on him from the front. And here you have to wait for the fog. It's like when the fog was so thick, when I first started to shoot, you couldn't even see him. So you got to wait for it to dissipate, and then you just kind of keep shooting. One of the models that I use in New York City, I teach at International Center of Photography in New York. This is Jim, and Jim is he's a model for sculptors. He's one of those people that like goes into a pose and holds it for 8 hours. So, this is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But this is in New York City in Bethesda Fountain and Terrace, which is this big giant room that opens up onto the fountain, but it's kind of built into the side of a hill. It's got a staircase that comes down the back and then opens up into the terrace. So there's beautiful light coming in from the outside towards the fountain, and then the back of him is towards the staircase, which is a much softer light. But it's all painted very kind of like Italian Renaissance. And I looked at this big arch. He's bald. The colors and everything were so warm. I asked him to take off his shirt. And this is again the 56, and I'm pretty sure that I shot this at 1.2. This is really pretty wide open, all natural light. I shoot a lot of actors. In my classes in New England, I have a whole bunch of actors that I work with when we're doing our classes on natural light or working with flash. And I just kind of love the whole Irish feel. Now, here's another breaking the rules. Normally, if you have somebody looking out of the frame, you want to have more space in front of them instead of behind them. But I loved the whole falling apart wooden boat. And the only direct sunlight late afternoon was just lit up him. It's kind of like coming through trees. And I just kind of found this spot of light. So I really like this picture. You're going to see some more pictures. Oh, here's another picture of him right now. This is in a barn that had this old Ford truck in it. He's closer to some windows as he's looking into the windows. But the light that you see coming from camera left, that's the barn door wide open. But, even though it's a giant barn door, the further away you are from the light source, the smaller the light source gets, right? So here's my hand. That's the light source. The closer it is to you, the bigger it is. There's my hand way over here. Well, it's the same size as it was when it was closer, but now, relatively speaking, it's further away. So your light source isn't just about the size, it's also about how close it is to your subject. So even though the windows are smaller, they're much closer and very soft light on him. And that barn light, the barn door light, just kind of gives that nice edge. Portable flash in New York City in Grand Central. And we did this with the grid spot, and we did it from a low angle. Again, remember direction. It's going to help tell the story. His body's turned away from the light. His face is turned in the light, but he's monster lit. The light's coming from underneath. So, and then, we've got the background with the train tracks back there and the train platforms, trying to get the feeling like it was nighttime and maybe he's a private eye, or maybe he thinks somebody's following him. You're trying to set a mood. You're trying to tell a story. So again, it's not complicated. None of this is complicated. It's all just thinking about what the story is, what's the elements, and how can you use your light and your background to be able to tell a story. This is Lee's sister, who's a musician. She lives in Durango, Colorado. The one on the left, you can see that they're backlit, and there's a big reflector bouncing the light back into them. And the one on the right is basically the same thing. But again, very careful camera position. Sometimes you have to be very careful. It's going to be a big difference if you just move your camera up and down or side to side just a little bit. Like when you see the two of them, you see how I have their heads right against the trees? If I was a little bit lower, that tree line would go through their head. If I was a little bit higher, then you'd be having the river in the background going through their necks. And the same thing with Yvonne sitting by herself. There's all those tree branches, and some were lighter and some were darker. And that was very particular for me to be, I had to be just in the right position. And, you normally want to shoot eye level, but, you've got a little bit of room to move. So, it's really careful. It comes back to my training as a product photographer in the studio about paying attention to the tiny, tiny, tiny little details and how a slight change can make a big difference. And I haven't talked about this yet, but this is something else that you need to pay attention to. Styling. Styling means so much. And that doesn't mean that you need to be there and you need to be brushing somebody's hair every 5 minutes, but it's paying attention. You don't want to have, like I got curly hair, you don't want to have a piece of hair sticking up. And you see how her scarf is draped? I wanted to make sure it wasn't stuck underneath of her sweater, or in watching out for her necklace that you don't see the clasp on the necklace, or there's big wrinkles in somebody's shirt. It's like all of this has to pay attention. And again, for portrait photographers, regular portrait photographers, you could have a beautiful picture of somebody and their shirt, because you weren't paying attention, has got a wrinkle in it that's like this. Okay, so what's going to happen? People are going to look at those pictures for years, maybe generations, right? When you're doing family portraits, they're going to live on for a long time. And the longer they look at it, they're going to go, geez, I really wish that I had paid attention to my shirt. They're not going to blame you. They might blame you, but you know what? It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility. You're responsible for everything that's in that frame. Musician friends. This is my friend Jack. He just got a sponsorship from Korg, and we went into an old theater. We got permission to go in there. He's lit with a whole bunch of lights, and you can see on the one on the left, those are the stage lights from above, and the one on the right, I'm zooming a little bit during the exposure. He's lit with he's got a beauty dish on him from the camera right. He's got a strip light on him from camera left. And then this is my portable flash shining right back towards the camera. So to make it, just makes it feel like there's a performance going on, like it's much more spotlighty. And then the one on the right, again, I'm using a slower shutter speed to pull in those background lights and doing a little bit of zoom so that they would streak and a little bit of the background would streak as well. I'm going to talk more about the dragging the shutter when I get into the Venice pictures. This is his daughter, who has gone on to become an incredible percussionist. She's 11 years old here. This was just done a year ago. And she's played on stage like with the Drifters, like all night long when she was 9 years old. So similar thing here, I've lit her up. You just got the industrial kind of like stage in the background here. Other friends of mine, this man, Craig, in the center, we've been friends since we were in the 8th grade. It's Craig Carter, and the band's name is the Hurricane. So we went out to the Scituate Lighthouse, put him up on top of the rocks. This is just late afternoon light. Jackson had just gone up to New Hampshire and did a solo recording. He was doing an EP, 6 songs, recorded in a cabin studio. That's why it's called the Cabin Sessions. And at that time, this was about 7 or 8 years ago, I was living in a 200-year-old farmhouse. I was living in a 200-year-old farmhouse with a 200-year-old barn. And the glass in the barn was 200 years old. So, that old glass, the light comes through it and it's like all wavy. So we were walking around trying to figure out where we were going to shoot. And when we walked into the barn, I saw that light coming in the window and I went, oh, go right now, put on that plaid shirt and get right back here. Because you only got 10 minutes because, the earth rotates, so to be able to get the light in the right place. Now, normally you don't want to put people in direct sunlight, but with the wavy glass and with all of this, it all fit together really well. And I placed him so that the shadow of the frame would just go along the edge of his face so that his eyes would be lit up. We'd definitely have the light in the eyes. Okay, so now this is just stuff that I've been doing. A year ago, not this past December, but the year before, when everybody was doing the pandemic portraits, they were doing the porch portraits or whatever. The people in my neighborhood, I live on a cul-de-sac, and there's 5 houses on the cul-de-sac. These were the only people that we saw in the first year of COVID, right? It was like we would have block parties. We would put out a fire pit in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and everybody would bring food, and we would all social distance and hang out. And I wanted to do something to give back to everybody. It's like everybody looks out for each other. So this is a multi-generational family. Here's the original mother and father, one daughter number 2, and her son, and then this daughter's husband, and then her 2 kids and their dog. So I'm doing a big umbrella to fill in with the natural light. And I did Christmas portraits. Well, I did fall portraits for everybody so that they would have them for their Christmas cards. And I wanted to see their houses. I wanted to say, these people haven't been able to visit their families. So here they are, here's their home. And the only thing that I asked from them is I asked them to make a donation to a local food bank, because so many people were so food insecure during the pandemic. So that's what I did, and that's what people did. So this is one of them. This is my direct next door neighbor. Again, we got a multi-generational family, the parents, the daughter, and then her son. So that's my house in the background, right over there on the left-hand side. This little boy loves to wear bow ties.
Bobbi,
Yes.
another question. The photo just before this one, you have the families placed in a certain way. I think it's like a triangle type placement, instead of all being across the frame on the same horizon line, let's say.
Right.
It's an
Right.
advantage to have, when you have portraiture, to have a kind of a triangle formed with multiple people. Is that correct?
That's true. There's a couple of practical reasons in here. The father can't stand up for long. He had his lungs replaced. He had a lung replacement. So he's not able to really stand up for very long. So we knew that we needed to put him in the chair. But I also wanted to see, because this is Bev, his wife, she does all of these flowers and she does all the stuff all the time. And I wanted to be able to see that. So I've even got them placed so that you can see her little fall banner over here. They're beautiful Japanese maple back here. And this is one family, right? So I wanted to have all of them together. And you can see that I've got them either in blues or in magentas, trying to go along with kind of the grayish blue house and the fall colors. So she has another daughter, but she's in college and she couldn't get back for the photograph. So I couldn't get all of them. Her husband is gone. So, but I kind of liked the separation. But I also liked, it's number 2 in Garden Drive. And, it was kind of part of it. When I first started doing this, see, actually, Tommy is blocking the mailbox. I first started doing it. I was thinking I was going to call them mailbox shots, so that I have everybody out by their mailboxes, so you'd see the number of their street with their house in the background. But that didn't seem to work out completely for everybody. So sometimes it's a matter of planning it, but it is always looking at, how are you going to make the composition work? What's going to be the strongest, and while you're still telling the story. So these are people actually just around the corner. And I loved the speckled light that was coming on their house back here. So again, I've got them lit with a big umbrella. And these people are just like so much fun. So, people quite often when they start off, they have a tendency to just kind of stand there and they're pretty straight. And, I talk to people, like cajole them. I do all kinds of things. And I'm gonna tell you some more stories in a minute. And I got them laughing. And it's my favorite pictures are of them laughing. And then these people are hysterically funny. And they have all of these dogs that are, you should see them trying to walk their dogs. Like one person going out trying to walk 2 boxers, and then this other big one. So I just had them all kind of like holding on. And these, we didn't do their house. We took their dogs up to right behind our house is our cranberry bogs. I live in Carver, Massachusetts. It's the cranberry capital of the world. There's more cranberries grown in Carver than any other town in the world. So, and they grow Christmas trees up there too. So we took them with their dogs up there. This year they have a baby. So we didn't take the baby in the middle of winter up into the background. So anyway, but it still was all kind of done the same way. All right, I'm gonna move on because I realize it's 8 o'clock and I have an awful lot to get through. So I'm gonna try to speed it up a little bit and not tell you so many pictures. As I said, I live in the cranberry capital of the world. This is my fabulous husband, Lee. This is a little bit of high-speed sync. There's a cranberry festival every year in our area, and they will, they'll flood an area with and float the cranberries, and you can then get in the waders and get in the water with this. So I stayed out and took pictures of Lee throwing the cranberries up in the air. But I have been working on a long-term project. We've been living in this house for 5.5 years now, and I have been shooting the cranberry harvest every year, every fall. I've gotten to know a lot of the people. I have probably 15,000 pictures of cranberry harvest. So here we got the guys in the waders. This is doing the booming. So they're not grown like this. The cranberry, or they're bushes, but they're below the ground. And then to harvest them, they flood the bogs. And then they have these machines that come by with these tines on them, and they just go up and down and they knock the berries off the bushes so they float. And then they come in with the booms and they pull it in, and they've got this 2-story high truck with a giant vacuum cleaner hose that's like this big that comes down the truck and goes under the water and then sucks the cranberries up into the truck, where they go through kind of a cleaning process and then dumps it into tractor trailer trucks. Again, more than you want to know, but I just love the sea of red. Okay, this is the minimalism. Okay, so what we have here, I spent 5 years going to a powwow on the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation in Idaho, from 95 through 99. And this is shot on a Hasselblad. I'm shooting with the 80mm lens at f4 or 2.8 actually. Walter Old Elk is on the right, and he's a traditional dancer, and his son, Brandon, is a grass dancer. So on the powwow grounds, they have a couple of big giant teepees. It was a totally overcast day when I was going to do this, and the light was very soft, but I wanted to do a couple things. Like, again, I wanted to give you a feeling of something. So everything is very light. And I have them both looking up so that I can have light in their eyes, for one thing. And I'm at a low angle. I'm at a low angle because I'm trying to show reverence for them. I'm, giving them some honor. I'm not doing a tight headshot. And I wanted to have the pieces of the TP out of focus in the background. So if you can take a moment and imagine that you're there. Imagine that you're standing next to Walter, and I'm trying to create the feeling here that we're on the plains, right? It's like if you're standing next to him and you're looking out, you're just seeing plains and mountains in the distance, and it's quiet and peaceful, and right? You kind of get that feeling here. The truth is during the powwow, it's chaos. There are kids running around and dogs, and people are selling stuff and cooking food, and people are in their trucks with their regular tents set up and barbecuing. And it was so noisy. And you hear all the powwow music in the background. It was so noisy that me kneeling down like this, trying to talk to Walter, I had to yell and he could barely hear me. And I can't be more than 4 feet or 5 feet away from him. That's how noisy it is, and surrounded by chaos. If I was eye level, you would say chaos. So this is another thing. Show what's necessary. Eliminate everything that is not necessary. Do I need to see the whole teepee to know it's a teepee? No, I think you pretty much figure that out. And it becomes a much more interesting photograph when the viewer has to get more involved. All right, so I think I go into another section here. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions for me to answer here? And then I'm going to get into the travel stuff. No? All right. Let me.
Question.
Sorry, yes?
So what's the environment photography? You usually take pictures of people as well as people with pets in their surroundings.
Yeah.
So you're making like portraits of people.
Yes, absolutely.
I see. And it, yeah, just want to wondering about it, what it means for environmental photos.
Thank you for asking that question, because sometimes people who are not familiar with this, they think that I'm taking a picture of the environment. And that's not what it means. I'm sorry, I really should have made that clear in the very beginning. So Thomas, thank you for asking that question, because it is using the environment that they're in, whether it's their home or where they work, or in the case of the Native Americans here, like being on the powwow grounds. So I'm using the rest of the environment to help tell you something about that person. You know, that your portrait is being enhanced by the environment that's in the background. If it was in the studio, it would just be a plain piece of paper or a painted background or something like that. That's not going to contribute to telling a story, right? It's not going to give you any more information about the person. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for asking that question. Okay, shall I go on?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So lots and lots of pictures. I'm going to go through these a lot faster. All the other stuff, there was a lot of educational stuff there. As I said, I've been to Dubai 14 times. This is in Abu Dhabi. This is the Grand Mosque, second largest mosque in the world. But I love to show this picture because obviously you can see where you're at. But look at this guy. Everybody wants to take pictures of their family wherever you go, right? When you go to Disneyland, you want to have pictures of your family at Disneyland. If you live in the UAE and you go to the Grand Mosque, you want to get pictures of your family with the Grand Mosque. So this is a universal thing. This isn't something that is just American. It's like everybody wants this. Same thing. This is in the largest mall in the world, I believe. They have a 3-story high aquarium, and you can actually go scuba diving in the aquarium. This is in Saudi Arabia, and this bakery makes 1,000 loaves of this bread every day, and people are lined up to come and get this bread. This is lit. This was the job in Saudi Arabia, or I was working with a film crew, so it's actually their lighting. I probably would have made it a little bit different, but it still, you know, gets the idea across. Again, I'm close with a wide angle lens, and I wanted to get the action of him, you know, pulling the loaves out of the oven. Still in Saudi Arabia, this is all incense. It's like, you know, a frankincense and myrrh and, like, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So the emphasis here is on the product and not on the person. Oman, these boys were playing soccer, and I just love talking to people. Now, I have to tell you, I'll tell you this now because you'll see this is going to happen throughout the rest of the time here. I don't speak anything but English, and sometimes not all that well. I don't speak any other language, and lots of places I go, people don't speak English. Now, I'm walking around with a camera, right? So it's pretty obvious that I'm a photographer. So I go walking up to people and I say, excuse me, I would like to take your picture. You know, and point to the camera, point to them. It's like, you know, can I do this? Is this okay? And they don't understand me, but they certainly understand what I'm talking about. I mean, that's pretty obvious but what's happening. But at that point on, sometimes they go, some people are shy. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. And I will always go, oh, but you're so beautiful. Your eyes are so beautiful. You've got a nice smile. They can't understand my words, but they can see my face. They can hear my tone of voice, right? And that makes so much in getting through to people. Very rarely do I have people turn me down. And if they turn me down, I say, thank you very much. And I go away. but I love doing this. And lots of times now I have to stand back for a second. I'm not, because I'm not sure I have this picture here. So let's see if you can see me. I know you see my head cut off a little bit. So lots of times, especially with Arabian men, I ask if I can take their picture and they get very stoic, right? They get very serious and they get strong and they stand proud. And so I will always take those pictures. Okay, I will always do that. And then I will peek my head around the edge of the camera and go, ha 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 ha. And they crack up laughing. And that is universal. Everybody is going to respond to that. Everybody is going to laugh. So these boys, they were just taking a little break from playing soccer, and I came over and asked them if I could photograph. And they were just kind of shy, and I started doing the ha 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 thing, and they just all cracked up. Master goat herder in Oman, no, goat seller, I should say. He's sitting inside of a doorway, and right in front of him, the sun is hitting the sidewalk in front of him. So he's got monster light on him, which kind of makes it even more spooky because he's got that one totally blind eye there. In the fish market in Dubai, there was a skylight that just had the most beautiful light. I mean, look at this beautiful Rembrandt light that's on this man's face. Now, I've been there many times and they knew me. So this is like these big long counters where they're like scaling the fish and doing all this. But way over here is where people are buying stuff, and they would let me come back. And this one man, I loved his face. I love his nose, and that light coming down was just special. I didn't make that, but I saw it and took advantage of it. I have this whole series of people that you wouldn't expect being on cell phones. So also in Dubai, this is at a hotel actually. So the guests can ride around on the camel out in the desert, so these guys are just hanging out waiting for their next person. Also in Oman, another cell phone shot. In the souks, where they're selling everything. I shoot a lot of falconers. I'm really into birds of prey. Falcons and eagles are my favorite. So falcons are everywhere in the Middle East because it's kind of like, do you know how racehorses can cost $1 million or more? So can falcons. Falcons, the like low-end falcons start at like $250,000, and they race them and do all kinds of other stuff. So sometimes this isn't really environmental, but that sunlight coming through and just kind of like flaring with the silhouette. Okay, turkey. Looking for the light. You can see behind him, there's some couple of umbrellas. This is in a marketplace in a very small town. And underneath the umbrella, when you take the light off of the top, we call it porch lighting or garage door lighting. If there's no light coming from above, then that means the light has to come in, which means that you're always going to have light in the eyes. If you're outside in the shade, but the sky is above you, you're going to have soft light, but you're still not going to have any light in the eyes because the light's coming from above. If you take away the light from above, then you get the light coming in. So I'm in the marketplace. I was talking to people, photographing. This man was about 15 feet away, and he saw me, and he very slowly came walking up to me. And he got up to me, and his eyes were on me the entire time. He got up to me. He stopped. I tried to talk to him. He didn't say a word. He didn't respond. I took his picture, and he continued to walk. And that was it. And I love this face. In Turkey, the Sufi dancers, I have my flash on camera with the grid spot on it. But you can see here, when you use the grid spot, it's a spotlight. So it's very exacting. And you know how your flash can be like this when it's mounted on the camera, but you can tip it. So this was the shot where it was my first shot. It was straight into the middle. It needed to be tipped up a little bit so it would hit his face a little bit more, but I never got that shot. This was the closest because I like him being in the foreground and the other guys being in the background. And I never was able to get one person in that foreground for the same thing again. But I still love this. Slower shutter speed again to pull in the light that's in the background. In the Grand Mosque in Istanbul. Again, I got my wide angle lens low and looking at all the lamps. Now, I want you to look at this guy's pants. We were in this town that in the tour guide, The town was Endymion, yeah. And it said it's where the men wear baggy pants. And we had no idea what they meant, but the men wear baggy pants. You see this? It's apparently they were designed for riding horses originally, but apparently they find it very comfortable. So obviously this guy works with sheep. There's a little environment. Okay, there's the blacksmith with his anvil. Selling coffee. I love this guy's attitude. And again, this is not my light. This is the artificial light, but it really worked out well in this situation. Okay, Myanmar, one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and it is so horrible what's going on there now. This little corridor here is a very famous place. It's on the covers of books. So we would always try to find this. There's more monks and nuns per capita in Myanmar than anywhere else in the world. I believe something like 25% of the population are either monks or nuns, and they're Buddhists. So they're very happy because even if they live in poverty, they know that they will be reincarnated and they will come back in a better life. And those that are having a better life always try to help out the people who are not as fortunate as them. So we would always go and try to get some young monks, and we would pay some money to the monastery, make a donation. So we got these kids and they were really cute, and then we just had them jump up in the air. Here's the young nuns up on the top of the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon. Some other monks. He's standing by a doorway, and I placed the other one to sit in the background, and there's another doorway there that's lighting him up. Backlit. I love this guy. If you look a little closely, you can see right here, this is his ox back here. And of course, backlighting to get the smoke. The Eggman, Goo Gajoop. I don't do symmetrical pictures very often, but it was pretty obvious that that's what needed to happen here. There's a train that goes around Yangon. It's the circle train. It cost foreigners $1. It cost other people like 5 cents, and it's 20 miles. And people jump off and on the train, and they sell things on the train. So this woman sells brooms. We were at a market, and this little boy was a fish place in this place, and I said, "Show me your fish." I just love his expression. This is another one of those no light coming from above, so it all comes in. Now this is pretty interesting. This is in Mandalay, and this is the river that is the lifeblood that goes through a lot of Myanmar. So there's a lot of commerce on here, but you can see the quality of the boats we're talking about. Okay, so you see these women, you see what they have on their heads? They have baskets filled with rocks. So what they're doing, their husbands are behind me, and there's boulders, and they're breaking the boulders up into small rocks. The women fill the baskets, put it on their head. They walk on a plank to get on the boat. They dump it in the boat, and then the boat will go up or down river and take it to places, and they will use the rocks to make roads. So this is not an easy life. Now, it's fairly poor in this area, and all along this riverbank here, there are people that live in shacks on the riverbank. And this is one of them. You can see that there, it's raised up. They've got kind of like a platform. And I don't know what this is. It's like this tarp that had some advertising on it, and they got a tarp ceiling, right? A tarp roof. And, she's boiling some water for cleaning up. And amazingly enough, in this morning, and I'm out walking around, is that and I would always ask if I can take pictures. And these people would ask me if I wanted to have something to eat or drink. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's like I'm like, I'm this fat American. And here they are saying, oh, do you want something to drink? Do you want something to eat? Here, we'll share with you. I mean, just amazing people. This was on Inlay Lake, and they do a lot of weaving there. And also, I think this is in Bagan, doing some inlay. So, notice sometimes it's like, what's going on in the picture? It still is about her, but everything is leading into her. What do you choose in the picture to show? Do I need to see the top of her head? She's doing this very intricate inlay work. So I want to see what's going on with her hands, but I still want to include her. So, and you always talk to people and make sure that it's okay to photograph. And then I watch what they do. You have to be an observer. You can't just show up and take 1 or 2 shots. You've got to watch for a while. You've got to see what's going on, feel the place, and then watch what happens. Because normally people are doing stuff like this, it's repetitive, so that you can start to plan. And then I would try different angles, coming down lower, looking up, longer lenses, wider lenses. You try a variety of things. I mean, in any of these situations, I could shoot anywhere from 20 to 30 shots, trying to find what will work. It's an exploration process. On Inlay Lake, these very famous fishermen with these kind of like baskets, and they use their foot on this oar to steer their boats. Okay, this is one of my favorite stories. This is I'm still in Myanmar. So we're in this little town, and there's little houses inside behind these little thatched walls, in a way, thatched fences. So it's all little dirt pathways and roads, and people have carts and stuff. I mean, obviously they're not driving cars around here. And I was down low, there wasn't anybody around. I was down low taking a picture of, I found this all fascinating about how this was going on. And all of a sudden, this little girl comes running down from camera left, sees me and comes running towards me, and then just stops and stares at me. Well, within a couple of seconds, another boy comes running, and then another one, and then a couple more, and then another one. And wait, I got to go back. I blew it. Okay, so they're all look at them looking at me. They're like, "What's this crazy white chick doing? Why is she squatting down? And what is she doing?" And they just all stopped and stared at me. So when the next one came up, I did the ha 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 thing, and they all cracked up laughing. They just thought, "Oh my God, this is so funny." They just laughed and laughed and laughed. And this is one of my favorite pictures. I just love the honesty of this, and that these kids they just cracked up laughing. It was great. Okay, Ethiopia, Omo River Valley, all the tribes. This isn't so much environmental as it is about the lighting. She's underneath a thatched roof, and lighting is kind of coming in from both sides, but I love the expression on her face. This is in one of the marketplaces. So you can see that there's a lot of people and there's a lot of stuff going on behind. And it was perfect because they had an umbrella, which made their own porch lighting. So it was good light on them. And I did the ha 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 thing with them, and they just cracked up laughing. This is also in the marketplace. He was just walking around, this boy walking around with a chicken. I put him, there was a little round building with a thatched roof, and it was the only place I could find any shade. So I asked him to come over there, and I love that his necklace, the color of the blue, matches the back of the building. And you can see the light in his eyes. In front of him is just like all kinds of people on blankets out in the front with selling their stuff. And that's in the sunlight. So that's what's reflecting in his face. And their skin is so beautiful, but it's got this natural glow. And so it reflects anything that's around it. So, like you'll see their skin be blue because of the sky, or in this case, you can see it's kind of warm underneath because it's all dirt out in front of him. And then there's a little bit of blue edges from the sky. In the capital city at the top, Ethiopia, a lot of people don't know, is a Catholic country. Not Catholic, it's a Christian country. They do have a lot of cathedrals, and so at the top of the hill in the city, there is a temple, and this is a nun, and she lives in a tarp shack. Now, I don't often pay people. I don't do that. I'm not really there. Lots of times you may see people going, hey, pay me. This woman I did give some money to. She's a nun living in a tarp shack. I am perfectly happy. She didn't ask me for money. I gave her money. Do you need to see the whole shack? No. You need to see a part of it to be able to get the idea across. Now we're into the villages down in the Omo Valley. So I really like this picture because, you get an idea. This is her hut. We're underneath of an overhang. It's the hut's just directly behind her. But when you first look at this, you don't quite realize that she's actually holding a little boy in her lap, and he's shy and he's covering himself up. And I love the expression on her face. The Cairo tribe. Again, if you can see in their eyes, you can see This is on a photo tour, and you can see I've got like 3 or 4 of my participants are with me, and you can see us standing there. And again, it's all out in front of them. They're in the shade, but out in front of them is just a whole lot of dirt that's in the sunlight. So beautiful light on them. Okay, so here's my ha 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 trick again. This is a totally different village, and I saw these guys and I just thought that they were great. I love the guy with the Coke bottle glasses on this, and I did the ha 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 thing and they cracked up. And I went back again the next year. I went to Ethiopia again the next year and went to the same village. And when I get out of the Jeep and started walking into the village, these guys came running up to me. They came running up to me going, ha 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 ha. It was great. Okay, this is the same village. These are little stools. They don't have chairs. They have little stools that they carry around with them. These 2 men are blind. Being out in the sun and in the dirt, it happens quite often. And some of the women go blind because they put ochre in their hair, and it gets into their eyes and blinds them. In this is a matter of waiting. It's like I asked if I could photograph them. I had a translator with me. They all kind of came together and got arranged because I was looking to, try to see a little bit of the background. But I saw this woman with her baby way back, and I waited until she came. I watched her walking, and I waited until she got to be right in here so that you could get a different sense of the village. Yes, this is the Mercy tribe, and these are the people with the lip plates. This one, you can see she doesn't have her lip plate in, and that's what the lips look like. They start when they're teenagers, and they slit the lip, and they'll start with a little tiny plate, and they keep stretching it out until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't have the picture in here of the woman with the biggest plate. The biggest plate I saw was as big as my face. And the bigger the plate, the higher the status in the village. So it's really kind of amazing. But I mean, look at everything else that they've got. I mean, it's like it's amazing what they do. This is a long story, so I'm not going to go into it. This is the Mercy tribe. Again, Mercy is M-U-R-S-I. A lot of the Ethiopian tribes, they farm and they have cattle. And a lot of the tribes fight each other. In times of trouble, they'll help each other. And in times when things are going well, they will fight each other. And they all have automatic machine guns. I mean, it's crazy. Why would you think that these people have machine guns? But they do. It's kind of sad, actually. You can see he's got one in his lap. So, this is like their normal, this is their normal every day. You see what he's got in his ears? They also do the big ear piercing where they spread that out. I think you'll see the boy's ears here. See that? That's all. This is his ears surrounding this. They've cut a hole in it. The Mercy tribe. I mean, lots of times there's scarification, there's the hand painting, and the scarification can mean things too. So this is the Omo River. This is the Karo tribe. And this one particular village is up on top of the bluff. You've probably seen, if you've ever seen other pictures of Ethiopia, you've probably seen millions of pictures of this place. So this is the horseshoe bend in the Omo River, and they're up on the top. And again, there's no phones. They don't know that we're coming to see them, so this is what they look like pretty much every day. This is also the Omo tribe. This is that other boy was standing right here. This is the chief. I have a small flash in a 2-foot softbox being held right off camera. I love this because I love the chief being lit up, and the boys just have a little bit of light. Now he's the leader of the community, right? And this is the future. So they're up there and they're looking out into the light, and you still have detail on them. I really love this picture. It's one of my favorites. Okay, now we're going to get into Carnival. Okay, it's 8:30. Am I okay?
Sure.
Got about another 10 minutes or so.
Is that
You
okay,
sure we're
Chuck?
doing okay? Okay. All right. So Venice. So now I lead a photo tour to Venice every year. We're going again in 3 weeks. Carnival is on this year. There wasn't Carnival last year. I've done it 10 times. This is my 10th tour, and it's fantastic. So here's the Doge's Palace, and that's the Basilica. The Basilica was having construction done on it at the time. But I love this guy sticking his hand in here with the cell phone. But sometimes, very rarely do we have fog, and fog is just kind of like very, very magical. We're normally out there before dawn. Costumers are out in St. Mark's Plaza and also along the canal, because they know that the serious photographers will come out. We go out at 6 o'clock in the morning. The sky will be dark, but the street lights will be on, and there's other lights that are around. And you bring your portable flash and you flash on camera, off camera. Some people bring huge lighting kits with them, but they know that it's going to be serious photographers are going to be there, and they want to be photographed. That's why they're there. They want to be photographed. These people will come year after year after year. They can spend anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 on their costume. Almost all of them are handmade. Some people design and make their own costumes, and they bring 2 or 3 costumes with them so that they're different during, I mean, it's really amazing. This is not Rio, which is all about sex and nudity. This is about complete and total make-believe fantasy. You know, some of it goes into a little bit of Renaissance, but some of it is like this. It's like this is, and they all have masks. I mean, it's just amazing. So here I have my portable flash with the grid spot on. I've turned the portable flash a little bit to the left. Now, I don't like my costumers to be directly underneath the street light, because then they got light on top of them. So you can see that I've got them pulled away. So you see that they're further away. So this is my flash that's on, a little bit of spill off over to her, but I wanted to create the feeling that they were being lit by the street lamp. So that's why I turned it off a little bit instead of putting it straight on them. But you can see, you know, here's another couple in the background. You see the photographers around. So there's always quite a few people around, and we try to pay attention to each other, be careful of each other, and not get in each other's way.
Is your flash on camera or off
Both,
camera?
and you're gonna see that as we go. I'm gonna do both, and I'm gonna talk about the reasons why. We normally, you know, we're in the plaza at 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun comes up at about 7. By 8 o'clock, we're normally gone. It's that we've had an hour of sunlight, if we have sunlight, and with that early morning light. And by 8 o'clock in the morning, a lot of the tourists start to come in. And of course, they just run into the costumers and want to do selfies with them. And a lot of the costumers will leave because they'll be out there at 6 and then they want to go get some rest before they come back out. But they're there because they want to be part of the pageantry that goes on. They want to be photographed. They're fine with having the tourists take the pictures. I mean, that they know that that's part of it, and they want that too. So, but there's some fantastic costumers. This is one of the Rose sisters. There are 3 Rose sisters. Mona Rose designs and makes all their costumes for the sisters every year, and you'll see several of them. And they're always they're themed, so they don't have exactly the same costume, but they're all in the same idea. Doge's Palace behind, St. Mark's Basilica, early morning light coming through over here. Look at the nice light on the horn. Again, you're going to notice on a lot of these pictures that I'm either on the ground or very low. Because if I was standing up looking at somebody, if I wanted to see their feet or their whole costume, I have to tilt down like this, right? Which means that their head's going to get big, their feet are going to be small. And what am I seeing? I'm seeing the ground. I don't want to see the ground. I want to see what's behind them. So when normally, like in regular photography, if you want to do a full length of somebody, your camera height should be, waist high. So that way your camera back is going to be parallel to their body. So you're going to get a good perspective there. If you get down lower, you make people look taller. So, you got to be very careful about all this. But you can see I am on the ground right here. And I'm trying to make sure that I don't have, again, the clear headspace, right? So I'm okay with this big, strong diagonal line here. And she's kind of framed by that.
Can you describe on the ground?
You will see some pictures. I am sometimes I'm kneeling, sometimes I'm sitting, sometimes I am literally laying down and looking up.
Okay.
So when I go to Venice, I keep one pair of black pants that I wear only at 6 o'clock in the morning, from 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning, because I know they're going to get dirty. I come back and put on cleaner pants for the rest of the day. But from that 6 to 8, I can be on the ground a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, early morning light, and that's a San Salute in the background. That's Mona Rose. She's the one. She's fantastic. There's down at the Arsenal, there's a clock tower. Again, this is all natural light right now. But you're starting to get the idea about the intricacy of the costumes. This is early morning, and this is my flash. Let me see. Oh, I don't have the other one. I believe my flash is directly, no, it's not on the camera. It's coming from camera right, because I have another picture of her facing away. And I put you're going to see a picture of this. I put my flash on a stand, and I will have a softbox or Pro Photo makes like a thing that looks like a shell, and it's really easy. So I have a little light, I put it on there, and I have a radio remote on my camera. So I can just put my flash down to decide where I want to light them, how I want to light them, and then I can go, and almost everybody is standing up taking pictures. So I just go sit in front of them, right? So I'm not in their way. They don't want to get on the ground. I want to be on the ground. So then I can shoot. So, and I talk to the people, I direct them. A lot of the people have gotten to know me. I mean, we get, everybody in Venice has a card with their picture on it and their email address. And if you ask them for their card, they know then that you are a serious photographer and that you know what you're doing, and they want you to send them pictures. So if you ask for a card, they know that, and then you can direct them more. So I normally come in, see what's going on, take a few pictures, wait to make sure that nobody's right in the middle of doing something intense. Then I will ask them for their card. And then when I come back to sit down again, I will then direct them, and I will say, can you come over here? Can you turn this way? Can you turn that way? Sometimes people, their hands are in the wrong place. I will tell them to raise or lower their hands, and they will be cooperative because I've asked for their card. Okay, so, and then we put up a gallery, and we collect all the emails, and we send the link to the gallery to everybody on the email list, and they can go and they can download their pictures. So now people know us, and they're very grateful, because amazingly enough, a lot of people don't send them pictures. So where do you think I am now? I'm on the ground. Okay, if I was standing up, now the sun is just about come up here. And if I was standing up, you would have seen nothing but a lot of people around. So this year we decided to get confetti and throw the confetti up in the air. And so of course the flash is going to freeze that. But you always have to ask, because if somebody spent $10,000 on making their costume and there's all kinds of intricacy in there, they don't want to be picking confetti pieces out of that. So quite often if we do this, we throw the confetti in front of them, not on their costumes. So again, I'm sorry, let me finish this one thing. You can see where the light is coming from camera left here. You see how the light is on this side going to darker over here. So it's not directly on camera. Yes, what's your question?
Okay, 3 quick ones. One, are you using all prime lenses, or are you
No,
using?
oh no, no, actually, for this early morning, my second favorite lens, which I happen to have right here, is the Fuji. This is a 16 to 55, which is the equivalent of a 24 to 85 on a full frame camera. I have to use this lens. You're going to get into see some of the zooming stuff later, because it zooms beautifully, but also because there's all these people standing around when you're, they'll be like one person, one model or one costumer standing there, and they could have 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 12 people all trying to photograph them. So I can't get back with a longer lens because there's 6 people standing in front of me. So with this, I can frame how I want. So normally these early morning shoots, this is the only lens that I use for that. In other situations where I have more control over something, I will use longer lenses, and you'll see some of that as we're going on. Okay, you had another
For your
question?
lighting, yeah, the second question, for your lighting, when you have the camera, when you have the flash off camera,
Yep.
do you have someone holding it, or are you actually putting a small light stand out there?
I bring a small collapsible light stand. It's actually about this big. It's very lightweight. I have 2 different kinds, and it fits in the suitcase very easy. So I bring that, and I have the flashes mounted on it with whatever modifier I want. I always have a couple of modifiers in my pocket, and I will look at the person, figure out what it is I'm going to do, and then decide where I want to light from, put the light down. And again, it's not in anybody's way because I'm not putting it directly straight on. If I wanted it directly straight on, then I've got it on the camera. So I have it off. It's going to be out of people's way.
Thank you.
Okay. And you had one more?
No, you answered 2 at once.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. So now in some cases, Lee would be my voice activated light stand. In some of these cases, we'd be walking around and he would hold the light and place it where I wanted so that I could direct him. But now we have the Pro Photos with the TTL that are so incredibly accurate. I mean, I don't have to worry about being on manual and adjusting the power or moving the light closer or further. I can control it all from my controller with the Pro Photos. So some of those earlier pictures, I was using the Fuji flash, which does have TTL, but if I want to get it off camera, it didn't have a TTL for off camera. It was only TTL on the camera. So in this case, again, we've got about a 2-foot octa on this. It's called a rapid box. This one is particularly is made by Westcott. About a 2-foot rapid box is what it's called. And I have Lee placing it. And again, you can see I am on the ground. And this was the one time that we had this much fog. And everything looked like it was a mystical, like a fairy tale. It was really incredible. I've never had the fog like this except for this one year. Had a little bit of it, but not like this. So I just thought it was great. So, but you can see after a certain time, you see that the street lights go out. So that's part of the reason to get there really early, you know, before that happens. This is actually natural light on that foggy day. There's San Salute in the background. This is a prime lens. This is my 90 millimeter, which is the equivalent of a 135. And it's an f2 lens. So the very last picture I'm going to show you is my favorite of all time. So sometimes I am on the prime lens. Here again, I'm on the zoom lens. I've got my flash off camera on a stand. And we're across from we're on the island of San Giorgio, which has more cathedrals on it, but I'm not looking back at San Marco on here, but this is the Grand Canal that we're looking back at here. This was actually a tourist, but he had an incredible mask, and this is shot in infrared, natural light. Okay, now I don't just shoot the costumers. I also go up and talk to people on the island of Burano. They're known for lace making, but I found this lovely woman, and she sells costumes. She sells masks and costumes. And, you know, a lot of these places have like overhangs that come out, like a canopy that comes out in front of their store, so that in case it rains or anything, that their stuff that they put outside is not going to get wet, which is, again, the perfect lighting, the perfect garage door lighting, taking that light off at the top. It's just absolutely beautiful. So in this case, I have the young mask seller here, but this man here, he makes the masks. And he does a lot of the traditional mask making, as well as doing some of the common ones just for fun. And I've photographed him twice now. He always takes us back and shows us how to do everything. This is also on the island of Burano. And, you know, I find musicians wherever I go. This is in the Rialto market, actually. So these guys, anytime they figured somebody was an American, they would start singing Hello, Dolly. And of course, you have to do a heroic shot of your gondolier, right? So I'm sitting in the back, and there's the Rialto Bridge in the background, and late afternoon light, and I love this guy. In a Murano glass factory, a couple of times we got permission to go into a working factory, not the tourist, you know, demonstration ones. And there's windows around. The lighting wasn't always so great, but it was fascinating to watch what these guys do. Here's another one where here it's just like there's just a little bit of light on him, but the window light coming back there. And this all happens. It's all choreographed. Like there's, you know, this guy has just pulled the molten glass out of the furnace and he's dripping it down. And this guy is turning the glass and spinning it and then cutting it off. And he's going to do it a million times. So, you know, you can't come anywhere near them. I mean, we're like having to stand in certain areas because, you know, these guys they're slinging molten glass around. You can't be in the way or you're in trouble, right? So so you got to like figure out. So I was trying to get where I wanted to get this all backlit. I really wanted the light to be coming through here, but I wanted to have him against the dark with just that little bit of edge light on him. So it's like shooting and then waiting and then shooting again and then moving a little bit and like trying things. You got to find it. You can't just walk in and take one picture. Okay, so this picture is kind of a special technique. The flash is on the camera, it's a grid spot, and I have an orange gel on it, and I have my camera white balance set to tungsten. Now, all the light behind him is natural light. It was kind of overcast, so it was already very cool. And you know what happens if you go outside in the day and you have your white balance set to tungsten, everything is going to be blue, right? So if I put that to blue, if I put put the white balance to tungsten and I use the flash, then the flash would also be blue. So what I did was I put an orange gel on the flash, a CTO, color temperature orange, which changes the color balance of the flash from daylight to tungsten. So now where he's lit by the flash, he has the correct color on him, but all of the natural light in the background has gone blue. And I'm doing a little bit of zoom. I do a lot of zooming. An 1/8 or a 15th of a second is what you need to do to get the right kind of zoom going on. And I believe there is, oh, I didn't include it. Oh, I have a picture of me laying on the ground on my back, shooting like this with the flash. And then you see all these other people standing behind me. And I was shooting with the medium format Fuji, which has an articulating screen on the back. But so I could have just like kneeled down and looked down, but I didn't want to block the people behind me. So I got on my back and laid all the way down so that I wouldn't block anybody behind me and I could still get the angle that I wanted, because I wanted to look, this is under the Doge's palace. I wanted to see all of the big archway here. So again, I can't do that standing up. I could see it back here, but he was so huge and magnificent, you know, I needed to be low with a really wide angle lens. This is again, flash off camera. And I love this. And this is Elaine and Muriel. I've been photographing them for 5 or 6 years now. And you can see the light is coming from camera right. So over on camera right, I have that 2-foot octa. Okay, so it's like a softbox. It's closer to him, but some of the light is falling off onto her, right? So she's not quite as bright as he is. He's being featured. So we did this to have established a little bit of depth in the picture, and then we switched it. So we had her up front and him in the background. And again, that little bit of fog that was in the background that day. And this is the pixel stick. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. It's a long, skinny tube that's got LEDs in it, and you can put a JPEG inside of it. It's kind of like a reverse scanner. You have to have a long exposure. So this is in front of the basilica. It's dark outside, but the sky is starting to get light. A 10-second exposure. So I have the flash is down below. It's on the camera. I've got all of the participants are with me. Everybody's on a tripod, and everybody's at a slightly different angle. And so we count down, and everybody opens their shutter. I hit the flash, so the flash goes off, and Lee is standing behind. And he takes the pixel stick and he's pointing it back towards the cameras, and he's running around and doing this or swirling it around or doing different kinds of things pointed back towards the camera. So you get this whole thing. I think there's one more there. So there's the fire. We do the fire a lot. So again, light is low. When the monster light, the devil, had her, lean back and painted all the fire in behind. So again, really, this is like at 6:15 in the morning. I think we got there at 5:45 to get it all set up. And a couple more available light. This is Mona Rose again. This is the year that she and her sisters were Swan Queens. So this is, I never remember what the name of this building is. So Doge's Palace is to my right. And this is the building that's directly across from it. So the basilica is kind of like behind where her hand is. So early morning light, it's coming through the columns of this building. So she's lit up beautifully by that early morning light, and her gestures and everything are just like fantastic. The very next picture I'm going to show you, I have the costumer standing in the exact same place, except she's facing the other way and I'm on the other side. So you notice here how there's a little bit of sunlight that's hitting the columns. Okay, well, when the sun is up a little higher, these columns are fully lit. Okay, so then you get this. So she's standing in the same place. All that backlighting on the sun is lighting up her costume, right? It's like pulling up all the detail on this. But the light that's on her, and look how her gold mask is beautifully lit up, and there's great catch lights in there. This is the sunlight bouncing off that column and bouncing back onto her. So that's why her mask looks so beautiful. It's just like, remember I told you before about bouncing light into the big white piece of foam core board? It's the same thing. The sunlight is bouncing off of the column. This is my favorite picture. This is actually, you see this hanging behind? I won Best in Show in an international contest. It was based in Massachusetts, but it was an international contest. And there's very little done to this. I'm not a big post-processing person. There's, everything has to have a little bit of work done to it, but I was very careful about this. This is the first time that I met this person. This is Waltrod, and she has now become she and her husband have become some of our favorite people to work with. We've been working with them for 5 or 6 years now as well. So, but I was very careful to get the bouquet in the background. This is with the 90mm lens at f2. So it's as wide open as it can be, and that beautiful bouquet in the background. And I love these little orbs of light in the background that are kind of like going along her back. And I had shot her in a different location, and then some other people were shooting, and somebody was like really stupid. They put her in the shade instead of the early morning light. It was like, okay, I'm walking away. And then they moved her, and I stopped and I was looking at my pictures, and I realized that there was something here. So when there was a little bit of break in the activity, I went up to her and talked to her and showed her what I was doing and said, will you come with me and let me work on this a little bit? And she said yes. And so I got this picture, and she's fantastic. Another one who designs and makes her own costumes. So that is the final photo. Before I get out of the photos, before I close this, are there any questions about any of the pictures that if I need to refer back to something? Okay, I'm going to go to the last slide here. I want to make sure that everybody has this, since I'm glad you're recording this. So, you can find the bobbilane.com, which I haven't updated the site in like 4 years, so please forgive me on that. The Bobbi and Lee's photoadventures.com, that is where Lee and I list all of our educational. So if we're doing workshops, if we're doing travel tours, you'll find that there. And we also have things that we have for sale. I have a 2.5-hour Portraits, Natural, and Flash, and it's a video as well as still images. But in the video, I show you how to use your flash, manual, TTL, how to use it off camera, on camera, how to use all the modifiers. I'm doing demonstrations with natural light using reflectors, lots of pictures. And so you can get that. That's $60, but it's 2.5 hours long. Lee just finished and just put it up. He has I don't even know how many hours it is. It's a full class on infrared, if you're interested in infrared. So he's got color and black and white. He's going to kind of break some of the black and white out and sell that separately. But again, if you go online to the Bobbi and Lee's Photo Adventures, you'll see all this. So as I said, we are going to Carnival in a couple of weeks. It is sold out. And when we come back, March 1st, we'll be putting up the site for next year, so we can start taking deposits. We are taking deposits for the Iceland tour. This will be our 4th time going to Iceland. We can only take 7 people on that trip, and I've already got 3 people signed up. So just letting you know about that. So anyway, there's all of that. So I'm going to get out of this now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And there we are. We're back. Okay. Do I have any questions? Is there anything that I can help you with?
When is your Iceland tour?
It starts on September 3rd.
Thank you.
It's great. It's the best of everything. If you like landscapes, waterfalls, glaciers, icebergs on the beach, lagoons, sheep. There's a lot of sheep in Iceland.
What about whales? Are
No
there
whales. No
Oh,
whales.
okay.
Nope. Sorry.
Non-
You shoot the
Understood.
black and white, or is those processed from color?
Well, I don't think I had any I had that one infrared shot.
Right.
But the other ones were, obviously I shoot, and shoot camera raw, and then I will convert it. Now, Fuji has, how in your cameras you all have like picture styles? It'll say like standard, portrait, vivid, landscape, stuff like that. In the Fuji cameras, instead of having that, they have what they call film simulations, because Fuji makes film. So you'll have like Velvia, Astia, Provia. There's a whole variety of them. And they also have their black and white. They made a black and white film called Acros, which was a fantastic black and white film. So you can shoot Acros, and you can shoot it with a red filter, a green filter, or a yellow filter. But of course, anytime you do that, that only applies to your JPEGs. But their JPEGs are so fantastic that lots of times I've actually had a bunch of stuff published in magazines that has been a JPEG straight out of camera that I have handed over. So they're really fantastic. So again, I don't do a lot of processing, but I don't do a lot of post-processing. But you know, when you open up your images in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw, it's always going to open up in Adobe Color. A lot of people don't know that. So they just think that that's the way it is. Where whatever your camera is, if you go to, there's a little setting there that says profiles, and it's right at the top. And if you click on that with your camera, it will come up with those settings from your camera, or you can create your own. So, you know, a raw image is just ones and zeros. You have to give it some instructions about how to interpret those ones and zeros. Adobe automatically gives you Adobe Color. And quite honestly, Adobe Color pretty well sucks. So you should always be using your camera's profiles or make your own profiles. And it's like I said, the Fuji ones are fantastic. So I can take my raw file and they will have they have the Adobe interpretation of the film simulations. So when I go to profile, I have like 14 choices from using the Fuji cameras about what I want to open it in. And I can open it in a black and white Acros.
And those are for JPEGs.
Yeah, of course. You know,
Okay.
anything like that only is going to apply to the JPEG. But again, in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw, under profile, I can take a raw file and I can open it in that style, like
Gotcha.
Astia or Velvia or Acros.
I have a question with portraiture. You're walking down the street and you see somebody, you go, oh, wow, the background's great. This person looks great. I ask them to take their photo and they stand up there stiff as can be. You gave the technique of how to get them laugh, but how do you get them to relax and look more natural?
That's an excellent question, Richard. And I will tell you, this is the key to photographing people anywhere, whether you know them or not, right? You ask people questions about themselves and you listen to their answer. You actively listen to them. You don't be playing with your camera. You know, if you go up to somebody and what I do when I approach somebody, I normally tell them everything that they're going to ask me right up front. I will approach them and I'll say, excuse me, my name is Bobbi Lane and I'm obviously a photographer and I'm just kind of out walking around and looking at stuff today. And I noticed that the color you're wearing is just like perfect with the color in the background. I would really love to take your picture. This isn't for anything in particular. I'd be happy to send you a copy of it if you want to give me your email, or I'll give you my email. You can send it to that. You know, don't worry, it's not going to be used in any kind of weird way or anything. So, you know, how's that? So I'm asking them all the questions that they're gonna ask me. I'm answering all the questions. I'm telling them that up front. And then they may talk to me a little bit. So I'll say, well, you know, where are you from? You know, do you live around here? Or you know, this is, and you listen to them and you respond to what they say. So if they say, you know, you're in Florida. And if they say, well, you know, we live in the Northeast, but we come down here. It's like, oh, wow, the Northeast. So you have to shovel snow, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, sometimes we have to do that. And it's like, oh, you know, I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. And you share something about yourself, and then you ask them another question about themselves. If you ask them questions about themselves, the more you ask and the more you listen, you got to look at them and listen, nod, be an active listener, respond so they know you're listening to them. The more they talk about themselves, the more they will start to relax. And give them positive feedback. You know, it's like, oh, you've got a great smile. You know, it's really got a nice smile, but you know what? I really like the light right now. Can you kind of like look over there and give them a scenario? It's like, you know, kind of like imagine that you're in a sailboat somewhere. You know, it's like anything like that. And if you just talk to them like you already know them, they're going to respond. They're going to respond to that. But ask questions, listen to them, respond to what they say, ask more questions. Listen, respond. It works.
Bobby,
And how
don't
much
you?
time do you usually give that? You know, like you're interrupting their time by asking them to take photos. Is there a time limit that says, oh, that's enough time?
You know, I have when I teach this stuff, I go through a whole thing about your fears and their fears. And quite often as a photographer, you're afraid that you're bothering them, you're taking up too much of their time, all of that. I want to tell you that in my 40 plus years of shooting, only once have I had somebody say, I'm really sorry, I got to go now. Okay, so don't project Don't take your stuff and project it on them. But I will tell people, you know, if you've got a couple of minutes, I'd kind of like to try a couple things. And I'd like to try a couple of different angles, and maybe we'll try a little expressions, because I want to make sure you don't blink and I want to get a good picture. If you tell them that and you see how I'm talking, I'm like being really nice and sweet. And, you know, it's like that works. So if you say, you know, this will be a couple minutes, do you have a couple of minutes? And they may say, you know, I'm really sorry, I got to go catch a train. You know, it's like, or yeah, I got a couple of minutes, but you know, you've got to make it seem like it's interesting to them. And if you make them a partner, you tell them why you want to photograph. What is it that you find interesting about them? Why you want to photograph them? And it could be, you could just say, I really like your shirt and that background is great. The light's coming in right now. And, you know, and you look like a nice person. You know, it's like anything like that is really going to help. But again, that time projection. And the other thing, and this is another thing that I tell the students, is that if you see something, like you may say, you may go to a certain, you be walking around and go, wow, that's a beautiful place right there. Look at that background is great. There's really nice light. And maybe you hang around and wait for somebody to show up, right? But you should figure out what your framing is going to be, what your exposure is going to be. There's nothing worse than you being nervous about going up and asking somebody to photograph, and then they agree, and then you're not ready. So now you're trying to figure out what lens you're going to use, what your framing is going to be, what f-stop do you want. Do all that before you go talk to them. Get it ready ahead of time. And so that your relationship with them is just about them and not about something mechanical. Because if you have to spend too much attention to the camera, they're gone. They'll be bored. They don't want to do this. You take one picture and they'll walk away.
Bobby, don't you need model releases in some of these instances?
That's another very, very good question. You need a model release legally for the following reasons. If you are going to use that image to sell goods or services. So you're going to take a picture and somehow somebody is going to buy it to sell life insurance, or they're going to use it to sell Coca-Cola. Okay, first off, that's probably never going to happen. All right, but for using it for editorial purposes or using it for art, you're okay. Okay, it's only if it's being used for commercial purposes. Now, I will tell you that this is kind of cracked down a little bit, and rightly so. I know a very, very famous photographer whose work I really love and I have no respect for. He would go to the powwows and he would photograph the Native Americans, and then he would get a model release from them. He would get a model release, and he would tell people that he was a beginning photographer and this cost him a lot of money to buy the gear and everything. And he'd give him $20 and have him sign a release. And then he would take those pictures and he would put it on calendars and t-shirts and mugs. And he made tens of thousands of dollars off people and lied to them and said, there was this, right? I'm just an amateur photographer. I mean, that really pissed me off. When I finally met this guy in person one day, and he went to shake my hand, and I almost didn't shake it. I mean, I know several Native Americans that he did this to. So still coming back to this, it still is a good idea because you want to be able to give the picture to the people, right? So, and if they're uncomfortable giving you their email, you should have a card. You can get cards printed up for $10 with your email and your information on it. Give it to them and say, if you would like a copy of this, if you email me, then I will email you the picture. Once you have their email, then if something does come up and you need a model release, now you have a way to get a hold of them to be able to ask for the model release. Okay,
What you're
so
saying is that if you take those portrait images,
Mhm.
and I know it's illegal, for instance, in Greece, it's illegal to take photographs of national monuments in Greece and then turn around and sell them commercially in any respect.
You can't take a picture in the United States of a national park and use it commercially.
Right. But what I'm talking about is if you take a photograph, like some of the photographs you took at the powwow, or more specifically, the ones in Ethiopia, Eritrea, if you've been there, Saudi Arabia, if you have a portrait of people
Yep.
and you want to make an art, a fine art photograph print,
Yeah.
and then sell that print or posters of that print,
Yeah.
you're okay without a model release?
No.
That's what I'm getting at.
You have two different things between selling a print and selling posters. First off, I would have to say it would be extremely rare that you would take a picture of somebody and be able to sell it as a poster, because who would buy it? They don't know who it is. Why would they take a picture? Why would they want to have a picture of that
It
person?
depends on the.
May I
what's your
suggest
environmental photo?
may I suggest I interrupt this? We can get in, I've been into this before. We can get into a long conversation about the legalities depending on where you are and what you're using it for. If you have a situation like that, I advise you to consult an attorney, and I think
Yes.
we can move on in terms of
May I say,
debating what is
yes.
good and what's bad, because
Let me say one more thing about this. If you sell a print of somebody, again, ethically, I'm a very ethical photographer. If I have done this where I have had an art exhibit and I have photographed, like actually this woman right here. I won $500 on this. So when I saw her the next year, I gave her $100. So, you know, and she didn't want it. And I'm like, look, I got $500. I couldn't have made this picture unless it was you, right? So I'm happy to give you 20% of what I made. And I finally convinced her to take the money. I practically had to, like, you know, I actually went to her husband and insisted that he take the money. So, you know, if you're in an art gallery, I would suggest if you have a picture that somebody's going to buy, that you sell, that you should give some of that money to the person. Now, there's another thing, and again, I'll stop this because I agree with Chuck. You can get all kinds of apps on your phone that are model releases, and sometimes you can just ask people right then and there, and they'll sign it, and you're fine. They'll put your email in it, and they'll put their little finger signature on it, and then you've got it. So that's
when in
another
doubt,
very
get a
easy thing
model
to do.
release, but there's all kinds of rules in a lot of places. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is that if you ask a lawyer, every lawyer is going to tell you you need a model release all the time because they're just trying to look out for you, but you really don't.
So are there any other questions that we can ask Bobbi while we have her here about her presentation?
Boy, I've kept you guys a long time.
Yes, I think you broke a record here, Bobbi.
I warned you guys that I talk a lot.
It was great information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was very,
welcome.
very good, Bobbi.
You're welcome. I'm
really well
very
done.
happy that everybody stayed this long too. So
Yeah.
thank you all for coming, and hopefully I will see all you guys somewhere else along the line in person.
Sounds
Okay,
great.
come
We'll
to
do some
Florida.
follow-up for the club for you.
I'm sorry?
We'll do some follow-up from the club to our members
Great.
about